Um, How can't I maintain good muscle memory from DM practice to competitive? Is it anxiety or is there something else? Um, I think it's so. What one thing about DMing is that it's even though you're running around the map shooting people um, in maybe similar angles as you would be in the game, it is still quite different because there's a lot more that goes into fights generally in CS when you're playing competitive. There's lots of timings you have to consider. There's information that's been given up. There's less of a fear of death. So in DM you're inherently displaying this element of more confidence, and the confidence is it's partly because there's nothing lost if you die. Like that's what's really crazy when you look at a pro match and you see some players going like really nuts and have like that crazy level of confidence because it means that they feel so strongly in their abilities that it doesn't feel like a risk to them in a lot of cases, or it feels like such a favorable risk that they are able to go make these really aggressive plays or very ballsy plays, which require a lot of confidence to do. And you really need to be dialed into that kind of flow state to really be able to unlock plays at that level. So that's one thing. Creating that in your gameplay in competitive is difficult because again, there's a lot of other elements that go into it. You can't just start every single round being like, I'm really confident, and even if you are in that kind of state, there's really moments for it, and you've got to pick the right moments, obviously. So it's one of those things where DMing is a lot about movement, practicing your movement, practicing your mechanics, and gelling it all together in an environment where you are playing against other players and maybe they're dodging and so on and so forth. But there's a lot of unrealistic scenarios that happen in DM as well. So it doesn't really translate as one would like it to. I think that's the kind of thing we all kind of romanticize it to a certain extent, that we really want it to just translate, because it's like, if I can go and do 6 one-shots in quick succession and these crazy things, that means I'm capable of doing that in the game. And it's not quite the case, just because there's so many other factors and variables. So I think it's a lot of it is about just taking DM for what it is. It's a playground for you to practice your movement and aim together, and also various different techniques of shooting, and also potentially diagnosing issues if you have issues with if let's say you're consistently undershooting or overshooting. Although I would argue that there's probably better ways to kind of diagnose those things. So it's a difficult one, I think. And ultimately as well, one thing that's worth bearing in mind is that a lot of the improvements that you make in terms of translating your kind of mechanics, your muscle memory and everything from something like DM to competitive, it's something that does take quite a lot of time, and it does have to be backed up too with you just generally getting better at the game, making better decisions, consistently putting yourself in really good positions to use your aim well. Because when you're in a match, that's like you can't just, let's say, like you're defending the A bomb side on Mirage, for example. You can't just, like, there's a rush coming up a ramp, you can't just stand in the middle of the open and kill everyone. In DM, you can kind of do that. That's something you can do because, well, it's DM. Nothing is, there's no real stakes. You can just go stand there and try to shoot everyone. It's cool. But in a match, we're playing for consistency. So it's more about figuring out, okay, well, how can I actually like play that position in a way where I'm going to peek, I'm going to take the first shot, maybe I get the first kill. There's a second guy that wants to engage me, but you know what? I'm going to like hold off on that engagement, because what I want to do is I want to stagger their offense, buy time for my teammates. Now he's second guessing that I'm actually going to repeat from that angle, and he's looking to the other angle. Now he's maybe pulling out a nade. I can make a different play. I can try to reposition, and sort of like it's a lot. There's a lot more factors like going into that. But then all of a sudden, you're playing smart. You're kind of playing against your opponents in such a way where you're really dialed into the game and trying to stay a step ahead. And then that's when all of a sudden because your aim and so on should be automatic. It's like an automatic process that happens. You can't just focus on, I'm going to aim really well now. It's that's what the DMing is for. That's what the aim practice is for. That's what all the hours in the game are for. It's more about now putting yourself in the position to be effective and use that when the opportunity arrives. And trust me, I mean, you'll probably feel the same way. Like when you're really, really confident in your decisions and you feel like you're a step ahead and you're kind of like dialing yourself into that flow state, that's when you're going to start to just like kill everyone. And it's really about kind of being able to enter that state. And for me personally, I think the most consistent ways to enter those states are by really having this like really good mentality and mentality towards your decision making, and a really good methodology into how you kind of look at the game from a decision making perspective, exactly like I kind of described when we had that kind of a rush coming into you as a the A side anchor on Mirage. There's so many kind of things that go into that, and you'll see when you look at a lot of the pro players, that they are considering all these things. So it's really like everything. It's very much like performance in any physical sport. It's all extremely interconnected. Like the physical and the mental side of the game, very interconnected. So it's like that idea as well. Like if you're a lifter, if you don't believe you can do that rep, you're not going to be able to do that rep. And so like that belief is like really important. But I'm just using that as an example of the interconnected nature when it comes to all of this. So I hope that's how I hope that's somewhat of an explanation as to why it doesn't translate directly. And again, as I said, I know that's like, we really want to believe that it can. It feels like it should make sense that it can and could, but Counter-Strike is a lot more than that in execution in a game. And things will get more consistent over time. Like in terms of your aim, you have to think about it as something that takes a lot of time and months. I mean, and in some cases, depending on how good you already are, maybe sometimes it's going to take even longer to maybe diagnose and improve certain elements of your aim. So you have to look at it or think of it like that. And again, like technique work generally does tend to take, weeks to notice improvements. But you do have to try to be critical and analytical, introspective when it comes to your execution, because you could be doing something wrong. And of course, we don't, as people playing the game for fun, I mean, even prospective professionals, you don't get anyone telling you whether what you're doing is correct or not, or if there's a huge mistake with it. And for example, I have to say, like, not to kind of throw James under the bus in any sense, but he's a really good example, and I think he would admit as such, as someone who put loads of hours in, but he had huge issues in terms of his approach to his mechanics, like sitting style, the posture, the sensitivity, the mice, just like all these things were kind of just mismatched for him, which created this artificial limitation in what he could achieve, which meant that there wasn't the ability for him to really improve with just hours. He would have to actually change these things and recognize that these things were issues before being able to really make that next leap. And why is my I button not working? The fuck is that? Going to like copy an I now? That is so weird. So that's why stuff like using aim trainers, stuff like using aimbots, whatever it is, can be really useful, because you can start to diagnose yourself and see, okay, am I having issues with the mechanics? Let me take a reference point of a professional player. That's how it should look when I'm kind of moving my mouse around in the environment of CS. So if it's looking really far from that, or if it's looking clunky, or if I'm struggling to make certain movements that I need to be able to make, maybe there's another issue here. So it takes a while to figure all that kind of stuff out, but it's putting yourself up for easier shots will supplement good aim. I think that's absolutely the correct way to look at it. You should be giving yourself as many the easiest shots that you can most consistently hit as much of the time as possible. That's what it's about. It's all well and good to look at a simple highlight and be like, holy shit, that's how good players play. but you shouldn't be demanded to do something crazy unless, you know, it's a crazy situation. And then that's when the DMing is really going to help, because you'll have experience doing that. Because that's kind of what DM is. It's just loads of ridiculous situations for aiming, like where you're out of position pretty much the entire time. Like there, I'm just super out of position here, standing in the open. I mean, you can play DM from certain spots. I'm actually surprisingly it's feeling rather good, considering that I've been away for a month, like aim-wise, that is. Nice. Oh dear. The other thing too with aiming is that you have to experiment sometimes with different things, especially when you're a younger player, because it's hard to necessarily know. I mean, some people land on what they're going to use forever, like straight away, but it's not the same for everyone. Unfortunately, it's also not as simple as just copying your favorite player in terms of, you know, the setup that they use. One thing that you can copy though is find players that use the grip style and sensitivity styles that you like. You know, then that's a much better way to do it, obviously. Because I know a lot of people, you know, will look at Shroud and be like, oh shit, you know, Shroud's setting, you know, Shroud is so sick at aiming. Surely I could just use the same thing, but you know, there are inherent preferences for whatever reason, and also there's also anatomical considerations. Some people have really big hands, some people have smaller hands, some people have like really, I always forget what I think it's like radial something or other, and something basically this part like of the wrist movement, some people is more limited and some people is less limited. So if you're a wrist player, that might come into play. You know, there's just a bunch of stuff, you know. A bunch of stuff. Thanks for the question about the DM thing. That's actually a really good one. So that's